Economic Forum has announced that it has recruited hundreds of thousands of information warriors to control the internet, policing social media and forums for misinformation and conspiracy content, which will then be systematically shut down. According to Klaus Schwab's WEF, misinformation on the internet is an infodemic that is potentially deadly and requires a cure. The definition of misinformation, according to the WEF, is any content on the internet that they disagree with. This means the WEF's hundreds of thousands of information warriors will be engaged in the act of shutting down dissent against the globalist elite. Klaus Schwab warned us last month that whoever controls AI will control the future, and the Davos elites have wasted no time in laying the groundwork to enslave humanity. Conspiracy forums and YouTube comment sections are being targeted by the WEF's information warriors, who pretend to be ordinary users of the platform, but are actually working to disrupt proceedings and covertly seek support for the ideology of Klaus Schwab's WEF. Announcing the news on a WEF podcast, UN Communications Director Melissa Fleming said,
"So far we've recruited 110,000 information volunteers. And we equip these information volunteers with the kind of knowledge about how misinformation spreads, and ask them to serve as kind of digital first responders in those spaces where misinformation travels."
The WEF is subliminally influencing the masses in order to push their narratives onto the people. Also on the podcast, mainstream journalist Mark Little sets out potential solutions to the so-called infodemic. Little worked for Twitter and founded Storyful, a social media news agency closely linked to the fact-checking program. He has now launched Kinzen, a company which is threatening to use AI to censor online content on behalf of the elites.
I've started to see very much the spread of misinformation as a global health crisis. Because only when we think about misinformation in the same way we think about the spread of the coronavirus in a similar way, that misinformation is that serious a threat to our society. Misinformation now is happening within our friends and families. So we have to find strategies to, first of all, recognize it. And secondly, as active citizens, just like we wear masks to protect others, we need to be the good citizen, the active vector fighting back in our daily lives.
The WEF are determined to control the internet, and they have had a major hand in pushing Senate Bill 686, also known as the TikTok ban bill, which gives American citizens 20 years in prison for spreading so-called disinformation. This is the most dangerous bill since the Patriot Act in 2001. Documents, the State of Israel employs an army of 15,000 people to influence foreign publics, and they maintain 3 offices in 3 different countries solely dedicated to controlling the narrative on the internet. And Google's Jigsaw unit sponsors a RAND report that recommends infiltrating and subverting online conspiracy forums from within. According to the report, the best way to subvert conspiracy forums is by planting authoritative messaging wherever possible. So what is authoritative messaging? If you spent any time on forums lately, you might have noticed that when an interesting or explosive topic is created, the thread is immediately swarmed by users leaving messages disparaging the original post, picking it apart and basically finding any possible way to cast doubt on its legitimacy. This type of behavior is an example of authoritative messaging and is performed by users who are engaging on behalf of the World Economic Forum or Google's Jigsaw unit. The report states that if authoritative messaging in the conspiracy forum is successful, so-called moderate conspiracy theorists will flip to become influencers and help guide the flock to greener pastures as brand ambassadors for the common good, teaching others the errors of their ways. The Google report goes on to say that conspiracy forum members will eventually be persuaded by the bombardment of content flagged by algorithms, and they will slowly come around to believing that mainstream media and the fact checkers are right by the sheer volume of evidence and or peer pressure to conform. Judging by the content of this report, it's clear the elite do not have much respect for the intelligence and persistence of the average so-called conspiracy theorists. This is where they are getting it wrong. The average user of conspiracy forums in 2023 has already proven themselves by rejecting the all-encompassing fake news mainstream media, despite an endless barrage of propaganda and predictive programming. It's important that we understand the nature of the information war being waged by the powers that be. We are part of something so huge right now. The elites will not be targeting conspiracy forums and social media in 2023 if these forums were not the last places on earth where truth is being discovered and lies are being exposed.
Of data mining people and using this information for a purpose is nothing new. We see just recently a headline here. Businesses have been doing this for a very long time, Chase Bank is the newest to jump in here. Here's a headline. JP Morgan Chase cashes in on customer data. So they're monetizing its 80 million customers spending data, their individual purposes. They're now giving those to companies, allowing companies to sift through those so these companies can target ads directly to you from your personal purchases. Wow. So Facebook, no different. Facebook has been data mining its users for quite some time. Facebook users' personal data sent to thousands of companies, says a study. So AI it represents this huge next step of this. It's looking at everything humans have ever created, this digitalized world that we are increasingly in. Everything's online. We have surveillance systems, tracking systems that are feeding in through cameras, through our individual transactions. It's all feeding into this global digitalized system. And AI is there just data mining the analytical nuance of our behaviors. And so we see things like GTP and Google's Gemini, and you can't help think that there's a hidden or maybe not so hidden hand sometimes adding some guardrails to this and directing it. Although people are saying this thing is on the loose and it can't be controlled, it sure seems like some of these companies are choosing to focus on some data sets more than others. A conversation that went viral just recently, and it was with two people from the Singularity University, and that was Peter Diamandis and Salim Ismail. And what they talked about was kind of the current state as they see it for AI.
We see no mechanism of any way possible of limiting AI and its spread and its propagation and its development. Like zero.
I agree.
Unless
it cannot be contained.
Unless you control every line of code written, and the AIs are writing the code.
Yeah. And by the way,
as far as we can see, the genie's out of the bottle.
It is. You know, there were two absolutes 5 years ago. Don't put it on the web and don't allow it to code itself. And guess what? Both of those barriers were broken instantly.
Instantly, and the minute ChatGPT connected to GitHub with all of the code base there and learned through that, and now it can control anything, it can write its own programming. Pretty much, you're done. So there was a small possibility, but even then, it was going to happen at some point. And if we didn't do it, the Chinese would do it, or the North Koreans would do it. Somebody would do it, and it was going to happen, right? So there was an inevitability to it that I don't think is stoppable in any way, shape, or form. I think guiding it is the only path we have going forward.
I agree.
That is so terrifying. What these two guys at the top of this technology space are saying, it's too late. We already broke the two major tenets that we had. Don't ever put AI, don't ever let it have access to the internet, and don't let it code itself. And right out of the starting gate, some, genius decided, hey, let's see what this happens. This isn't a dash of pepper in a soup. This thing is now currently, as we speak, going taking in all the information of the world as we know it and how we move, how we think.
About Ray Kurzweil, you mentioned him. He is one of the other founders of the Singularity University. He's written a lot about this. And just to give an idea of this camp of thinking that these guys are talking from, Ray Kurzweil wrote a chapter in a book. The book is titled The Scientific Conquest of Death. And he's talking about a new version of the human body. And in this book, this was about 20 years ago, he says by 2030, electronics will utilize molecule-sized circuits. The reverse engineering of the human brain will have been completed. It will be routine practice to have billions of nanobots, nanoscale robots, coursing through the capillaries of our brains, communicating with each other over a wireless local area network, as well as with our biological neurons and with the internet. One application will be to provide full immersion virtual reality that encompasses all our senses. So this is their stated goal of what's going to happen. This isn't, hey, we need to write some better songs. Maybe we can help find a new medicine. This stuff is going in your brain. I mean, this is the extreme of the extreme. So understand that's where they're talking from. And one of the points they said is if we didn't do this, China would have done it, or North Korea would have done it.
The idea that being once you got this rolling, this is what no one thought about. How do you stop it? Well, I mean, they should have thought about it. There's only been how many science fiction movies, that have been dealing with this. We are just seconds away. We know this, where the videos, the deep fake videos, that the AI is going to be able to create our images, make anyone be able to say anything at any time. How will we know what the truth is? How will we know if we're even looking at the real president of the United States? Or some fake that's out there trying to confuse everybody? What will happen to news? I mean, Jeffrey, I guess I really am panicked at the moment. It feels like we are right on the verge of just a massive chaos-inducing problem. With OpenAI, all of these different people, with all of these different agendas, with all of these different psychological issues they have themselves, are building their own versions of what AI can do as we speak. There's a army, if you will, of different AI incarnations that are being created right now by evolved human beings and by less evolved human beings, and all of it is now worldwide. It's in everyone's hands. It's too big to stop now. It's now already in everyone's hands to do with it what they think they should be doing, and you have to imagine not all of it's benevolent.
So